Recently, I released one of the simplest yet most useful pieces of software I've ever written, ClipBrowser. It's so simple you could boil down the entire thing to this single line of code. Of course, there is a lot more going on, especially on Windows where I have to define a ton of registry keys. Also, I'm using modules that someone else made to do the majority of the actual work. The core functionality of this software is simply taking an input and copying that into your clipboard, which by itself is kind of useful, but when used the way I'm using it, it solves quite a few problems. I call it ClipBrowser because I use this software in place of a default web browser. What that means is when I click on a link, instead of opening ungoogled Chromium or whatever browser I have installed, it simply copies that link to my clipboard. This software is the equivalent of right-clicking on a link and selecting Copy Link, except this only requires one mouse click instead of 2 clicks and a movement. I want to talk about why I use this and how surprisingly versatile it can become, as well as a more philosophical look into the user interfaces surrounding this topic. In fact, ClipBrowser is just a proof of concept for a new user interface idea I'm calling the URL Manager. But first, I want to tell you the hilarious backstory of how this software came to be. So, a few months ago, I was trying to log into my Bandcamp account on a new web browser, and even though I know my password, and I'm already logged in on my main browser, Bandcamp still wanted me to verify using email. Fine, no problem, right? Till I go and dig up the password to that old email account, then attempt to log in only to find my password is no longer correct. And after trying other passwords over and over again, I came to the realization that someone probably hacked this account and changed the password, and there is absolutely nothing I could do to recover it. The password I had written down for this email was password1 to give you an idea of how little this email account meant to me. Similar situations happen all the time. Take Facebook, for example. Even though I know my password, they want me to verify with an email, an old Yahoo email. Okay, well, I also know my old Yahoo email password, so I'll just log in. Oh, they want me to verify with my Verizon.net email from like 2006, an email that no longer exists because Verizon shut down their email service. I didn't even know they shut down the email service until years after they shut it down. No notification, no email, no letter in the mail saying, hey, you have an account with us and you have to tell us to migrate it over to AOL instead of doing it for you automatically. And by the way, AOL is also just Yahoo, and Yahoo has absolutely no way of communicating with a human, so I'm locked out of that account forever. And it's also tied to a bunch of stuff. Even though I know my password, I can't log in. That's just one example. A hellish truth of the modern decaying internet ecosystem, and probably a ploy to be able to wipe old user account data or make it seem like more people are using their service or something like that. Back to Bandcamp. Okay, so I can't log into Bandcamp with my other browser, but I'm still logged into Bandcamp on my main browser, ungoogled Chromium version 60, which I've been using since probably 2017, maybe? Cool, great. I'll just go to the account settings and change my email address and, oh! For some reason, the settings page is broken and I can't actually access the settings because the page only loads certain things and I can't click on any of the UI. Truly, the power of modern web design. Forget planned obsolescence, I started using the term forced obsolescence a long time ago. Modern software and websites are forcing stuff to not work for no legitimate reason, or they are creating new solutions to non-existent problems which force old hardware and software to not work. Forced obsolescence is a very real thing. Because of my slow internet, I was actually able to see this in action on certain sites like Imgur, where I could watch the image and the rest of the page load, and then at some point, some script does a check and sees that my browser doesn't support whatever latest bullshit there is, and suddenly the page just goes white. It isn't a user agent thing, it's software running on my computer without my permission that breaks pages that obviously would work otherwise. Now clearly the Bandcamp settings page must be super advanced and requires the absolute latest, most cutting-edge web browser features like WebAssembly and whatever new JavaScript bullshit there is to render this absolutely stunning work of a couple text boxes. Okay, so by this point, I'm raging so hard that I decide I'll download a new version of Ungoogled Chromium and see if I can load my current profile in it. I download it, launch it, and boom, everything's there and everything just works. I'm still logged into Bandcamp, and I'm finally able to access the elusive and extremely advanced settings page. I'm able to change my email, and I've saved my Bandcamp account that has over 300 purchases on it. Cool, great. Mission accomplished. Now I can go back to my old Chrome version, because I already despise these stupid round-edged tabs. And this is where I screwed up big time. Launching the old version after loading my profile in the new version somehow corrupted the profile. So I lost pretty much everything, though I had my bookmarks and tabs backed up, so really all I lost were my active logins and cookies and things like that. This pissed me off so much, probably the most pissed off I've been in all of 2023, that I was considering getting out a full disk image I made of my OS a few days before and overwriting Chrome with that just so I could have my stuff back. But I thought, screw it, I'll just stick to the new version. It's probably better in some ways, hopefully. But to make things worse, Windows was still using the old version of Chrome as my default browser, and I had no way of changing it to my new Chrome version. So anytime I clicked on a link someone sent me, it would open up the old Chrome and break my profile again. So I decided I'll just delete that old Chrome exe, and now when I click a link someone sends me in something like Steam or Telegram or whatever, it just doesn't do anything. Whatever, I'll figure out how to change my default browser later, is what I thought. But I just never did that. This is where the story really begins. I quickly realized I actually liked not having Chrome open up when I clicked a link. It meant I didn't have to launch Chrome until I wanted to. It wouldn't just pop open when I muscle memory click on a link that I get, not realizing that Chrome has to load first. And you may think, big deal, who cares if Chrome opens up? Well, I usually have at least 100 tabs open across multiple windows at any given time. And Chrome-based browsers have this stupid backdoor code Google added, which makes YouTube tabs secretly buffer in the background, even if you haven't loaded the tab yet. This, I assume, is to trick people into thinking YouTube loads faster on Chrome, but for me and my slow ADSL internet, it means if I launch Chrome, it uses up all of my bandwidth trying to load every single YouTube video I have open in a tab. Now, before the whole browser profile corruption fiasco, I was already working on alternative ways of fixing this issue through the use of YouTube playlists and just not keeping YouTube tabs open at all. But not having Chrome load when I click a link kinda completely solved this issue. I could launch Chrome later on when I needed access to all my tabs and shit, and just use my other browsers to open links I get sent. And I know there's probably some Mr. Smart Boy out there being like, why don't you just use bookmarks? Yeah, tell that to my over 40,000 unsorted bookmarks. I've been using the same bookmarks file since like 2009, probably before that. But this is where the second benefit I got from the whole situation comes in. I have multiple browsers that I use to segregate multiple different things. For example, I have some old version of Opera installed, even though Opera is the worst browser. I exclusively use it to access my Shy Studios accounts on like YouTube or Instagram or whatever. Then I have my main browser and my personal browser and so on and so on. Having to copy each link I get sent to my clipboard actually gave me the freedom to selectively choose what browser it gets opened in. And when I do paste the URL into a browser, I can actually see the URL I'm going to go to and maybe modify it slightly before pressing enter. So eventually I thought to myself, why am I pressing right click, moving my mouse, and then left clicking on copy link every single time someone sends me a link? I could make a program that just copies the link to my clipboard automatically. And thus, ClipBrowser was born the very next day. But it doesn't end there, because the whole concept of ClipBrowser opens up an entire discussion about the user interface concept of clicking on a link. Now, logically, when you click on a link from within a web browser, it makes sense the web browser itself will handle that, since, traversing between hypertext via links is the single core task of all web browsers. ClipBrowser does not affect this. It only affects how your operating environment handles opening links that are presented to you in non-web browser software. So like when someone messages me a link on Steam and I click on it, normally that's going to open whatever software my operating environment thinks is my default web browser. And it's been that way since, well, probably since Windows 95, but Who knows when this concept was first implemented? I do know ClipBrowser works on Windows XP though, and it is surprisingly more responsive than on Windows 10. Why support Windows XP, you may ask? Well, if a simple piece of software like this cannot work on older computers, then the entire concept of open source software is an abject failure. And besides, custom-compiled older versions of Windows are the future of open computing, not Linux, at least in its current state. Anyway, back to the main point. Why is it that when you click a link, it opens up your web browser? How is it no one else has ever come up with this concept before? And my concept is far from simply copying a link to your clipboard. That is only the main function of the program, because really, ClipBrowser could be modified to act like a fully customizable middleman which manages how links are opened, otherwise what is known as what I'm calling a URL manager. Why is it that clicking on a link only opens your main browser? With some simple modifications to ClipBrowser, you could add customizable whitelisting and automatic browser selection. So say for example, I click on a YouTube link. ClipBrowser could look at it, see that YouTube is a whitelisted domain, and then open the link in one of my browsers that I have specifically chosen for YouTube links. Or how about you don't like YouTube and you want to watch videos on one of those YouTube proxy sites? ClipBrowser could automatically alter the URL to the site of your choice. So how about some horrible person sends you a link to reddit.com? ClipBrowser could be made to bring you to old.reddit.com instead of the horrid, nonsensical website they have now. Now, ClipBrowser does not currently have any of these features that I'm talking about, but they could easily be added by any beginner programmer. This is also one of the reasons I chose to write this software in Python, so that way more people will be able to take this concept and expand upon it quickly and easily. And ClipBrowser is just the first ever iteration of the concept of the URL manager. This URL manager could one day become a standard part of operating environments, complete with even more advanced features like different behavior based on what modifier keys are pressed when the link is clicked, which is something that would be very difficult to implement in the current version of ClipBrowser. But say I shift click on a link and it does something different instead of opening it up or copying it to my clipboard. Maybe I control click on a YouTube link, and because of how I've configured my URL manager, it doesn't open the link at all, it starts downloading the video with a custom YTDLP command. Personally, I think the whitelisting and multi-browser launch options are the most important features, and those could be implemented into ClipBrowser super easily. Maybe I only want to open Twitter links in Chrome, maybe I only want to open YouTube links in Pale Moon, and maybe I'll have it so unfamiliar links still get copied to the clipboard. One last benefit I'll mention to this software is the security aspect. You might think that you're so infallible and perfect that you would never accidentally click on a malicious link someone sends you, but trust me, it's possible. Even if you just fat finger the link while trying to move the chat window around. It can happen, and a URL manager would prevent this, even if it just gives you an extra moment to think about the link you're about to paste into your browser. I can definitely see big companies using the URL manager concept as a way to prevent phishing attempts and things like that, although a lot of intrusive antivirus software already does this in a slightly different way. But that is pretty much it. That's the concept of the URL manager and the history of ClipBrowser. I hope you found this interesting. And if you want to use or modify ClipBrowser yourself, then go download it from GitHub, or there's a link to a megamir on the ClipBrowser page of my website. And make sure you get subscribed, because I have quite a lot more philosophical user interface discussion videos I want to make in the future.